We hope these monthly readings with working authors will provide refuge from the storm and space for everyone in the community to sail the creative seas. Thank you to Dean Kathy McCarran, co-organizers Professor Tom Schaefer and Professor Rebecca Griffin, tech wizard Vana Trudeau, and everyone at Four Seas who contributed their support and expertise. While we're waiting for everyone to filter in, I have a few trivia questions for you. The first person to type the correct answer into the chat pod will win a copy of Chris L. Terry's novel Black Card, which he'll be reading from in just a couple of minutes. One prize per person. So question number one, prior to publishing his two novels, Chris L. Terry sang in a band that toured the United States and Europe. What was the name of this band? Once again, prior to publishing his two novels, Chris L. Terry sang in a band that toured the United States and Europe. What was the name of this band? You can type your answer into the chat pod. And question number two, Chris is a regular contributor to America's only nonprofit punk rock music magazine. What is the name of this magazine? Once again, Chris is a regular contributor to America's only nonprofit punk rock magazine. What is the name of this magazine? You are allowed to use Google. I'll get back to you with the winners of those first two trivia questions in a little bit. In the meantime, earlier today, Chris L. Terry visited Professor Rebecca Griffin's creative writing class. Here she is to introduce some writing the students in her class have done recently. Professor Griffin.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's great to be here at the first inaugural reading for the Bigger Boat writing series. We thought we'd start things off with some student writing, sharing some writing from students at Four Seas. My students in the Creative Writing Club, and I'm so glad to see that some of you are with us tonight, wrote haikus a little bit earlier in the semester. The assignment was to go out into the world and take 10 minutes and look around and just come back and write your haiku on a board that we had in the classroom. It was like a Google Doc that everyone was able to add to. And then everyone was asked to go around and read the poems out loud. And just the sound of all the voices of all the students reading those haikus that they wrote, I was just so impressed with, and I'm excited to share that with you tonight. So we recorded the students reading their haikus, and there's a little presentation with that. So I think we can start that video now.
Creative Writing 209 Haiku Board, Fall 2020.
Whites of eyes turned pink, snot slipping down to my lips. Man, I hate autumn.
The sun dried the porch. Birds flew through the trees and sky. Shadows lay on grass.
Leaves fall to the floor. The wavering wind blown tree, sun peak gave us warmth.
The zucchini plant is wilting away in the early autumn frost. Wet eyes glaring up at me, licks her lips with pride, then lays her head down.
In the green-kept lawn, crickets chirp with the birds. A passing car disrupts them.
The plants need watering because their leaves are droopy. That means they're thirsty.
Dimly lit room. Game box under a table. I haven't finished it yet.
The vines enshroud life now. The leaves are glibly pink. I must leave this season.
Finally, sunlight. After hours of gray clouds. Now just waiting for warmth.
And the sun came out from hiding in its cloud home. Dull deck glows brightly.
Large trees covered with leaves. The wind makes them sway. Orange leaves blow away.
Depressing nature, dead and dying, back to life, green inside my mind.
Crickets are chirping. A cardinal clambers on dry autumn leaves.
The house next door. Nobody is home. I think they moved out.
You are mine, my dear, the one who makes my heart whole, and that is true love.
Cold wind blows around, snow falls to the ground. This harmony slows us down.
Two trees in a box. This nature is my captive, like feet in my socks.
Brian May, so handsome, so talented, so charismatic as he plays along to the song.
Summer solitude. Loneliness and COVID make shackles for the wild.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. Excellent job. So my creative writing class, I was very proud of them. And I think that this really showcases just the amount of talent, creative writing talent that we have here at 4Cs. And I also wanted to say something about the Creative Writing Club for those students who are joining us today. There is a Creative Writing Club here on campus. It's just getting going again this semester. And I believe they're going to probably be meeting on Thursdays, but the way to get in touch with the club is to email Tom Schaefer, Professor Tom Schaefer, and he's going to be the person he's the advisor for the club. So if you email him, he will give you information about creative writing at 4Cs, being part of that club. And the club is part of who's sponsoring this event. So we're so proud to have them here at 4Cs.
All right, thank you, Professor Griffin, and thank you to your creative writing class for contributing the haikus. As we move forward, there's going to be students who are opening for the forthcoming writers as well. So we're excited to have students from 4C sharing the stage with working writers. And speaking of working writers, Chris L. Terry is the author of the novel Black Card, about a mixed race punk bassist with a Black imaginary friend. NPR called Black Card hilariously searing and listed it as one of the best books of 2019. Terry's debut novel, Zero Fade, was on Best of 2013 lists by Slate and Kirkus Review, who called it original, hilarious, thought-provoking, and wicked smart, not to be missed in a starred review. Terry was born in 1979 to a Black father and white mother. He lives in Los Angeles, where he teaches creative writing and works as a screenwriter. His work has appeared in Best Small Fictions of 2015, Pank, Very Smart Brothers / The Root, Apogee, Razor Cake, and more. Please welcome, from Los Angeles, California, Chris L. Terry.
Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm not accidentally muted or poorly plugged in or anything, am I? I'm a middle-aged person with tech right now. Okay, good. Thank you, Mike. Little fun fact, Mike's reputation precedes him. A few years before we met, I bought his 33 1/3 book on the Minutemen's album, Double Nickels on the Dime. And it opened up layer after layer of a dense, intriguing and exhausting album, and just kind of made it seem all the more, it made it seem, oh, I'm going to say layered again. It made it seem more layered. It made this complex thing seem even more complex, but at the same time, accessible and exciting. And I love when art can do that. And, you know, when art can enhance art. Thank you so much for tuning in and zooming in with us today. I'm coming at you live and direct from my living room, or excuse me, my dining room in Los Angeles off Crenshaw Boulevard. So I probably couldn't be farther from Cape Cod and still be in the US, but here we are. And I think that's kind of a silver lining of COVID and quarantine and all that, is that we can get together, at least on the computer, and not have to worry about being too far away. Bashla Andelson, are you still out there? Could have swore I saw your name on there a minute ago. We were just talking about DC. Thank you for coming, and thank everybody else. And Rebecca, thank you for bringing me into your class this morning. I had a great time running my mouth at your students. And I hope I didn't scare any of them away from the writing life. I'm going to read the opening to my novel Black Card, because I figure that kind of needs the least setup, the least explanation. Black Card is like a sort of satirical novel about a mixed race punk rock musician who goes on a mission to win back his actual black card, which is like the symbol of his credibility as a Black person. So it addresses themes of kind of being Black enough and what Blackness might mean, and how, you know, if you're maybe the only Black person in the room, it's hard to gauge if what you're doing is Black, if it's really Black. Kind of like the Zen question: if a tree falls in the woods, and no one's there, does it make a sound? If you're the only Black person who's there, then how do you know if what you did was authentically Black? That's kind of the question that's being asked. I wish I'd put a dedication in it, which would be that this book is for everyone who's ever been the Black friend, like the one in the group, the chocolate chip and the cookie, or the magical Negro, which is a theme that I also explore in the book. So I said it didn't need much context, and then I talked for a few minutes. So with that in mind, let me just take a sip of water, and I'll start reading from the beginning of Black Card. All right, this is from the prologue, which takes place about 5 years before the book starts. I was finally black again. I sat on my bed, waiting for proof. Gray smoke oozed under my bedroom door and through the crack where window pane met frame. The popping of needle on vinyl started so loud that I rubbed my thumb across my fingertips, expecting to clench the sound. A grimy hip-hop beat kicked in with distorted drums, bass that rolled a pencil across my desk, and a half-measure loop of a soul singer wailing. I steeled myself against the hurricane, pushing toes against floor, elbows against knees as I leaned in and bobbed my head, short but loose, striking that 10th grade balance of icy cool outside and whirring inside. I jumped when Lucius kicked the bedroom door open. His baggy jeans made a flag in the wind snap as he stomped his boot. A black hoodie covered the top half of his face, but not the sparse goatee or the zit under his right cheekbone. I watched him in silence, averting an identity crisis with every word I didn't say, every gesture I didn't make. The door slammed shut behind him, and he stepped to the middle of the small room, a husky specter floating in the sickly light. He jabbed his chin at me, and I stood to face him, thumbs in my hoodie's kangaroo pocket, shoulders and head back, equally ghoulish. "You had a big day, bro," he said. His voice was deep and rough for a teenager, cutting through the hip-hop beat. I nodded. "Let's see the highlights." He stepped to my right and pointed at the closed door. A beam of light shot through the opening between my curtains, and a countdown flickered above the doorknob. 4, 3, 2, 1. Lucius crossed his arms, and we stood side by side on the scuffed floorboards, watching the makeshift screen. Part 1. Black and white footage of me in a polyester PE uniform, standing on a gleaming wood floor. My eyes widen in surprise, and then a basketball lands in my hands. Then I seem to push it away. The camera follows the ball's arc across the paint and through the net. There's a quick pan, back to my face, shifting into a sunny grin as I hit a 3-part handshake with another kid and hustle off camera. "All right," Lucius said. "You was lucky to hit that shot, but the daps at the end sealed the deal. I'm glad we've been practicing." I nodded and said, "Me too." They kept my head moving with the beat, and we turned back to the door. Part 2. A montage of me standing at my school bus stop with a slim backpack slung from one shoulder, slouching at a desk in class, and sprawling alone on my grandparents' couch, watching TV. In each shot, my eyes sparkle, my nose wrinkles, and I bring the top of my right fist to my mouth, like I'm rocking an invisible microphone. "Now that's the way to laugh," said Lucius. "We don't cheese. They don't need to see our teeth. This ain't a slave auction." I did a pursed lip smile, then flipped my hood up over my head, too. Part 3. Me on my bed an hour before, cradling a phone on my shoulder. The music in my room quiets, to forefront the staticky voice of one of my old friends up north whining, "I can't understand you. Did you just say you wanted to ask me something?" "Mm-hmm." Lucius ran his eyes over my pale, freckled face and kinky red-brown hair. "Your mixed ass might not really look like us, but the least you can do is try and sound like us." I smiled again, agreeing silently. Lucius punched my shoulder, then we repeated the handshake I did in PE, finishing by bumping chests to fists. Lucius stood back. The music cut out and the light grew angelic and bright. I sat on the bed as he swelled his chest and spoke with the gravity of an award presenter. "I know you've been having your doubts. You were black by default growing up around those white folks in the suburbs, but this move changed a few things. You finally got around us brothers and realized them rap tapes don't make you black." He pointed to my dresser where hip-hop and alternative rock cassettes mingled freely in a plastic rack. "Think about how far you've come," he said. "The basketball players in your history class stopped clowning you for asking why they call each other Shorty. You stopped wearing that Beastie Boys t-shirt you got at the beach." He shook his head sadly at my Raggedy Andy-looking fro. "If only we could get you to a barber on the regular." I smiled sheepishly and touched my hair, my blackest feature. "Still," Lucius continued, "you realize that dropping the G from skateboarding didn't make it any less white boy." He held a palm up. "Now, I know you've been showing me these skateboard magazines, and they got some brothers in there, but it doesn't go down like that here in Richmond, VA, or old school down south. Besides, you got to know the rules before you break them." I fought the urge to roll my eyes and used my heel to nudge my skateboard further under the bed. Lucius continued, hands joined inside his hoodie pocket. I know you've been going through some tragic mulatto nonsense since you got here, feeling like no place is your place. But I see you working hard, and it's starting to come natural. Lucius paused, watching me whip fist to mouth, a second too late to cover my grin, and then he said, that's why I'm finally presenting you with this. Triumphant horns blared as Lucius slowly drew his right hand from his pocket, thumped it on his heart, and then held a wallet-sized, laminated card up next to his face. A heart-swelling soul song kicked in, and I craned forward. Black Card was written across the front in gold, diamond-encrusted capital letters. I reached for it, grinning, so happy to finally be a real brother. But Lucius pulled it close to his chest. Hold up. He turned my black card over in his hand as the music faded out. Brother, he said, and sized me up. I puffed my chest and ran my tongue across the front of my teeth. I hereby bestow you with this black card. Carry it with you as proof you're one of us because, he squinted and started to read from the back of the card. This card entitles the brother or sister who bears it to all Black privileges, including, but not limited to, use of the N-word, permission to wear flip-flops and socks, extra large bottles of lotion, use of this card as a stand-in for the big joker in a spades game, and most important, a healthy and vocal skepticism of white folks, AKA crackers, AKA honkies, to be renewed in 5 years upon evaluation. Thank you. I'm gonna do, could I read another short thing?
Yeah,
You're doing okay? Okay, yeah, I know that after about 10 minutes, people tend to get bored, but I feel like that was maybe 6. And I have another kind of funny list part that I thought I would read too. So a lot of the story is about the way that it's kind of hard to create an identity for yourself or to get to know yourself if you're constantly subjected to other people's impressions of you and the boxes that they want to fit you into. So this is a scene from just like a couple chapters later where the main character is talking about his appearance. My lips are full, my nose is broad, and my hair is a cloud of cinnamon. Usually Black people can tell that I'm Black because we know how to find each other in an unfriendly world. But white people see my green eyes and freckles and they assume I'm white. They live in a world where they are the norm. Why would they expect me to be anything but? Still, there's something about the way I look that gets Black and white people to try to place me. This leads to what I call the "you look like" game, where they explain my existence to themselves by telling me I look like someone else. The more they decide, the less control I have over my own personality. Here are the "you look like" game's top scorers. Number 1, Kid from Kid and Play. The light-skinned guy from a fun early 90s rap duo that did synchronized dances and starred in some movies that still pop up on cable. He was famous for his high top fade, a cylinder of hair rising about 9 inches off the top of his head. He's also a mixed brother and basically my color. The good part about being told I look like Kid is that people love Kid and Play. No one's ever said, you look like Kid and Play. Man, I want to fight those fools. On the downside, I think white people are into old school Black stuff like Kid and Play because it's from the past and it can't change anything right now. Embarrassing fun fact. I can't grab my ankle and jump over my leg to do Kid and Play's trademark dance. Number 2 on the list is Justin Timberlake. He's straight up white, but he has curly ramen hair, which I guess is where we sort of link up. He's also a great dancer with hit songs for days. I actually get called Timberlake a lot by Black people, but mainly associated with drunk white girls pushing up on me at dance parties. That's not necessarily a bad thing, and I'm jealous of how much Black people like JT. Number 3, Lenny Kravitz. He's handsome, half Jewish and half Black, and dresses like he's from the 70s. He probably has a whole shelf just for the leather vests he wears with no shirt. We look nothing alike. This one bugs me. Out loud, I say it's because his music is bland and unoriginal. Truth is, I'm mad because he's beaten me at my own game. He's got a better music career, money for cool vintage clothes, and he looks blacker than me, and a couple of his songs are pretty ill. Number 4 is this light-skinned cat that used to work with my sister at the supermarket. This one's followed by an expectant look, like I should know the name of this random high yellow cashier. Not all mixed people know each other. We don't have brown bag parties where we listen to smooth R&B and make jokes about people working all day in the field. Sometimes I wish we did, though. Then I'd have someone to talk to about this stuff without feeling like a stereotypical halfie having an identity crisis. Getting called light-skinned is a blessing and a curse, though. It's cool because I'm Black, just paler than the average Black person. Since being mistaken for white erases half of me and happens so often that I think I've failed at Blackness, I cherish being called Black. Still, it makes me feel like I have to reject my white side. And that's why I feel guilty for loving punk rock. Thank you. I'm going to stop there. That's Black Card, or from Black Card. There's a couple hundred more pages.
All right, Chris L. Terry, thank you very much. Before we begin the question and answer portion of tonight's event, I want to thank everybody once again for coming and remind everybody that we have 2 more excellent readers lined up for the rest of the semester. On Wednesday, November 4th at 6:30 p.m., we welcome poet D. Eric Parkinson, whose recent collection, No Arcadia, was described by former poet laureate Robert Pinsky as attentive as hell. And then on Wednesday, December 2nd at 6:30 p.m., we welcome Dr. Amy Brady, who's the deputy publisher of Guernica magazine, editor-in-chief of the Chicago Review of Books, and the author of the monthly Burning Worlds column, which explores how contemporary fiction addresses issues of climate change. So we're going to begin the question and answer session with Chris. You can ask your questions for Chris in the chat, and I'll pass them along to Chris. Chris, I'm going to start you off with a question here.
Yeah.
How has the pandemic affected your writing life?
I mean, there's a lot more people in my home office on a day-to-day basis, I'll tell you that. But on the upside, for the first time since I became a parent 6 years ago, finally in a place where I feel comfortable waking up early to write, which is my most productive time. It's my happiest time. So I've been, getting out of bed at 6. I think I'm gonna even start doing it a little bit earlier and writing for an hour or 2 before my family obligations kick in. I get my kid set up and ready for school, get him on his little Zoom school, and hopefully I can do some more work. I'm lucky that, I do different writing work and I teach creative writing. And it's not like I have to be, somewhere from 9 to 5 every day. So I can do a couple hours here and there. So it's kind of conducive to what I'm doing. If I wasn't, scared of getting sick and feeling cooped up with my family, this would in some ways be kind of an ideal situation. So I'm, trying to find those silver linings so I can sleep. Yeah.
All right. Jade Francis would like to know how long it took you to write your book, Black Card.
Yeah, Black Card, I started it in the fall of 2013. And a little less than 3 years later, I did 3 drafts. I did basically a draft a year. And this was also at the time when I was first becoming a parent. So, and like changing careers, and had moved across the country from Chicago. So that's part of my excuse for why it feels like it took a while, was that my life was changing rapidly. And so it was hard to kind of keep track of the book in certain ways. But it took me about 3 years, and then I started querying agents. And my agent, I worked on it with him for another 9 months or so. 3 years on my own, then it needed professional help, and that was pretty much another year. And then the editor at the publisher, who will not be named because it will ruin the trivia question, had me work on it for a while as well. So it's one of those things where I was talking this morning about how finishing a writing project isn't always really a triumphant feeling. It's more of a get the thing out of my life feeling. And I definitely had that by the end. Yeah, but I hope that you like this thing now that it's done.
All right. Question from Mark McKay, who used to play drums in the Boston band Slapshot and is a poet. Mark wants to know whether you'd say your book is autobiographical.
It's semi-autobiographical. I was, roughly that age, playing in punk bands and working in a coffee house and looking like I look and being who I am in Richmond. So it's definitely pulled from those experiences. But, the street names are real, the feelings are real, but the events and the people in the book are pretty made up. Yeah. Slapshot, that's cool. I lived in Boston for a long time as a kid, so I went to some of my first shows like the Middle East and the Rat and stuff in the early 90s.
All right. One of Professor Griffin's students, Aaron Olding, wants to know who your biggest inspirations are as a writer.
I a good part of the last few years has kind of been finding writing that spoke to me, that I felt like made me feel like I could tell my story, that gave me permission to do that, that opened those doors in my mind where I was like, there is stuff for me out there. Because especially, you know, in that era, literature, it felt like it was maybe coming from a more affluent social class than me. It felt like it was, you know, a lot whiter. It was just coming from a different experience. And I didn't know how I could tell one of those stories that was, you know, like the stuff that seemed to be the most lauded literature. So finding other kind of left of center Black authors was a really big deal. My wife, Sharon, when we first started dating in the mid 2000s, she gave me a copy of The White Boy Shuffle by Paul Beatty, which is like a satirical book about being a kind of offbeat Black person in Los Angeles. And that kind of made me go, oh, damn, there are weird Black books out there. This is a great start for me. And she also gave me Erasure by Percival Everett, which kind of explores themes of being Black enough in a kind of headier way. So it's cool. Sharon used to work at a bookstore, so she has a lot of books. There's that John Waters quote about if you go home with someone and they don't got any books, don't if you go home with someone and they got some good books that they want to lend to you, then you should marry them. That's my amendment to that, which maybe isn't as fun as what John Waters has to say, but what is, right? And with that in mind, another one of my favorite authors is Danzy Senna, who's another like kind of mixed race Black fiction writer who explores similar themes. And was reading her book Caucasia was the first time I was like, oh, this is an experience that I actually had, and it's in a book. I could do that too. And her latest New People, the novel, is one of my favorite things I read in the last 5-10 years, because it takes those themes, but it doesn't just stay kind of mired in them. It's about a lot of other stuff too. Yeah.
All right.
But then also, I should add, I'm a music geek, so like music sometimes gets me inspired, either like jazz that sends my head out somewhere where I can think, hip hop that has good phrases, punk that gets me fired up and makes me want to write, all those things too.
That's a nice segue into Tom Schaefer's two-part question here. He wants to know how you see your music background influencing your reading cadence, and also wants to know if you dabble in poetry versus lyrics at all.
Yeah. Poetry, no. I read a fair amount of poetry. There's a lot of really great poets in Los Angeles that I'd love to spend time with when it's not Jeremy. Ashaki Jackson, F. Douglas Brown, Bridget Bianca, Chiwan Choi. A lot of the writers that I hang out with are poets, and I feel like my work maybe does draw from the poetry I hear. I try to write in a way where it feels spoken out loud, where it can be read naturally out loud and sound like someone talking, not like someone reading from a book. And I think that comes from that. And I'm not sure if music really influences my cadence or not. I mainly just I listen to a lot of music, and I try to write in a way that sounds like it's naturally being spoken. So maybe that does have some parallels with hip hop or with just lyrics in general. But I am not writing poetry or music. I decided to, once I went in debt to get a graduate degree, I decided all my creative energy should go into writing. And then I had a kid and I was like, I can have one thing. I can't be having a band and trying to write a book. So I'm just trying to write books right now. And the rough idea is like, maybe once my kid is old enough to be embarrassed by his dad being in a punk band, I might start one then. But that's, I think, a good like 5 or 6 years off. Yeah.
That sounds like a worthwhile goal. Kathy McCarran would like to know what advice you have for community college students who might want to become novelists.
Yeah. I don't think that being in community college makes your path to being a novelist much different. Write a book, man. Sit down and set reasonable, attainable goals. If you sit down and you're like, man, I'm about to write this 300-page book, it's the first thing in a trilogy, so that means that I got to write 1,000 pages eventually. You're going to get 20 pages in and be like, damn, I have not even put a dent in this thing. And you're going to get overwhelmed, you're going to get burned out, and it's going to feel like an insurmountable task. But if you're like, okay, I want to write a book, and a book is, say, 250, 300 pages. So what I'm going to do is, for the next month, I'm going to sit down every morning during the week, and write 2 pages, 500 words. You're going to have 60 pages by the end of that month. Or, well, if it's during the week, you'll have like 40 pages, 50 pages. That adds up. So set those small attainable goals. Write when you can. You don't need to be, you don't need to have like a whole day at your special desk with the fainting couch nearby and your pipe and your blazer with the suede on the elbows and all that stuff. Like, just get in there when you can, get a little bit down, keep it fresh in your mind, keep that engine warm. So when you fire it back up, it's ready to start. It's ready to start again, and you know where to start writing. And it's just done piece by piece, brick by brick. You're building a wall. Yeah. And also props to you for going to community college. You're not going to be paying for shit for the rest of your life. I think you did a really good thing. Yeah. And you have some really good professors here. And they're not paying me to say that.
Ifalua would like to know if you think the experiences you describe in your book are unique to biracial individuals, or whether they're universal experiences for non-white people moving through a white world.
Yeah. I see your cat back there, Mike. That's awesome. I hope my cat Wallace comes to visit us soon. I think that I set out to, at one point I was like, I read Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, which is a Harlem Renaissance era novel by a Black author about the idea of being kind of subject to people's prejudices against Black people and how that can make you lose a sense of yourself. And I was like, I want to write a mixed race, one of those, mixed race Invisible Man. And as I was working, I was like, oh yeah, these mixed race experiences are Black experiences, and it's very similar. So I think that, the biracial stuff in here, there is some stuff I think that, like some stuff that mixed race Black people in specific deal with, especially like people who are part white. But I think that it's similar to experiences of being, feeling not whatever your culture is enough. I think that there are some parallels there. And I also, it was nice to kind of reinforce the idea in my head that these mixed race experiences are also Black experiences.
All right, Jade Francis has a follow-up question. She'd like to know what drove you to write your book?
Yeah. I knew I wanted to tell these stories, and that I'd been thinking about getting to know myself as a Black person as I became more and more of an adult, and this was something I wanted to tackle on the page. I felt like it was a story that I was, uniquely primed up and ready to tell. But also, there's a question of what motivates me to write, and I feel compelled to do it. If I'm not writing, if I'm not being creative, I feel like I'm losing myself a little bit. I get depressed. I get anxious. I feel like there's something inside of me that isn't coming out, and so I can't do anything else either. And so I feel compelled to write and express myself so that it doesn't get bottled up, and so that I can feel like I can function in the other aspects of my life, as a parent, as a spouse, as a professional. Yeah, so it's just, I think that writing's tough, and it's not that fun, and it's discouraging, and it takes a long time. So you have to really, really want to do it and feel the need to do it. And I have that problem.
All right, Anne Cifelli would like to know if writing Black Card impacted your parenting style, and if so, how?
Hi, Anne. Well, I wrote it when my kid was napping. So literally, like, feet on the ground, actual parenting. I wrote it during the first 3 years of my kid's life, rather, when he was, thank heaven, still napping. I miss that still. But also, it reinforced it, but more, I guess you could say, like, spiritually or culturally or thoughtfully. It brought to mind that idea of, like, I farm so my kids don't have to. You don't want your kid to go through what you went through. And it allowed me to kind of think on my own upbringing, think on some of my experiences, and think how I can set it up so that my child maybe doesn't have some of the same hangups or insecurities as me. I grew up in a primarily white area. So I didn't have a lot of ideas of Blackness outside of my own house, outside of my father, or what I saw on TV. And, TV doesn't always show us the best of ourselves. So I was kind of struggling to see myself in bad examples sometimes on the tube. So I got real happy. We live in Los Angeles, where there's, since I've been in my mid-20s, I've been living in larger cities where I don't feel like I stand out that much as a, 6 foot tall mulatto with a red beard. And I picked my kid up at daycare when he was 2 or 3, and he was playing with like 4 or 5 other ethnically ambiguous kids. And I kind of teared up right there. I was just like, this is exactly what I wish I had when I was a kid. And I hope it doesn't sound like I'm patting myself on the back as a parent, but I was just really happy that I could be providing that experience for my child now.
The partner of our mutual friend Bajla Andelson is an aspiring writer and would like to know how you found your agent that you felt would find the right market for your book.
Yeah. So a literary agent is the person who's kind of acts as the gatekeeper, and what they do is they pitch your book to editors and publishers. So they help you sell your book to the publisher, who then turns it into an actual book and sells it to people who read books. An agent doesn't get paid unless you get paid. They take a percentage. So the standard is they take 15% of your book advance, or the money you get upfront for things, whether it's a book advance or an article that they help you pitch or a short story they help you place. So they're only going to work with people who they think are going to be worth their time, and they're going to help keep the lights on at their office. So if an agent says, yeah, I'll work with you, just give me $500 up front and I'll pitch it to a few people, that's a scam. Don't do it. And how I found my agent, sorry. So I did my first book without an agent, Zero Fade. I was working with a very small press, and I come from this kind of punk rock handshake record deal type of background. So I went in there with the expectations that it might be like that. It might be kind of like, putting out an EP on my friend's record label. And it might do well, but there'd probably be kind of a ceiling to what it could do. And the business side of things might not be the most organized. I went in with low expectations, and the book did okay. I made a book I was really proud of, but the business side was a mess. I had a really hard time getting paid. The press that published it has a bad reputation for mistreating their authors and on the business side of things. And I was like, okay, next time I need to sign a better contract. I need to sign a more writer-friendly contract. And I also want to take a step up with my career. So in the 3 years between when Zero Fade, my first book, came out, and when I started pitching Black Card to agents, every time I read a book, I looked in the back in the thank yous, and I wrote down the name of the agent who was thanked, because writers always thank their agents in their book. And I looked up writers who I like. I Googled their name plus agent, and then that agent's name came up. And I had a Google Doc that I kept for 3 years, where just every time I heard a literary agent's name or I looked one up, I wrote it in that doc. So when Black Card felt finished, I spent an afternoon going through all those names, Googling those people, and seeing if they were taking submissions, seeing what they wanted writers to send them. Because it's kind of like pitching your book to a literary agent. It's kind of like a mix of applying for a job and turning in a paper to your most persnickety professor who's like, I will not read this unless it's in 12-point Courier and 1.5, all that stuff. And no more than 8 pages, send me that. So I had to get all those things exactly right to even hope that they would read my stuff. Another thing that I did while I was researching the agents was, agents generally work at an agency, so they got colleagues, right? And since I was just trying to make sure I was talking to the right people or sending my book to the right places, I'd even see who they were working with. And if somebody there seemed like maybe they'd be a better fit, maybe they represented more writers of color, maybe they like kind of satirical writing. Or I wanted somebody who handled young adult fiction, which I do sometimes, and also regular adult fiction. So those are all parts of me choosing who to pitch my book to, who to query. Then I queried a few people and got some responses, and my number one choice was interested in me. Hello, Kirby Kim. I don't think you're on here, but thank you very much. Yeah, so when I first started working with him, we had a conversation where he, before he was officially my agent, he was like, this is basically my vision for your book. This is what I think needs to be tweaked. This is what I want you to do before I start pitching it to people. And I liked what he was saying. And I trusted that he knew the market better than me, because that's one of the reasons I wanted to work with him, is that he could probably get my book places I wouldn't have even thought of. And I think it worked out well. I'm really, really happy with, I guess I'll spoil the name of the publisher now. I think have you asked the publisher question already, Mike? Oh, okay. Well, the publisher who will not be named, because that will be one of the quiz questions, I had a wonderful experience working with them. Mensa Domari, who was the editor that I worked with, we had a conversation when he made an offer on the book, and he was basically the weak spots in the book that I'd identified that I knew needed work, but I wasn't sure what to do with. Those were the first things that he said he wanted to work on, and I liked his ideas for them. And they helped me make a book that I also think is nice looking, and it got to places that, I don't know, I saw my book on websites that I read for fun, which was like a little goal of mine. I got to like click on something and be like, damn, that's my book. So it was a very good experience. Yeah. So bottom line, see who represents writers that you like or styles of writing that you like, and don't pay anyone until you get paid. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chris. It looks like we have about 4 or 5 more questions, and then we'll start to wrap it up.
Okay.
Thomas Schultz would like to know how long you've been a writer.
How long? The first time I wanted to do homework was in 3rd grade when we had to write a story. So I think that was the start of it. My mother is a librarian with a focus on children's literature and pre-literacy work. So I was always very encouraged to read at home. And my parents, I think pretty early on, were like, yeah, you're not going to be a doctor or a lawyer, we can tell. So let's just urge you toward what we see you doing. So I had a very supportive family. But then there's that kind of question of, when are you a writer? You know, when do you feel like you have permission to call yourself a writer? And I think that kind of goalpost can keep moving down, right? You're like, all right, I'm working on something, but does that make me actually a writer? Okay, I finished a story. Does that make me a writer? I think as long as you're writing, as long as you're working on something on a semi-regular basis, you're a writer. And once something you've written is done and it gets published in some way, you are the author of that piece. So you are an author. So that's where I'm at. So with that in mind, I think I've been a writer since 3rd grade in different ways. Started taking it seriously when I went to get an MFA in my late 20s. And my first book came out when I was 34. So I've definitely been an author since then. Yeah, no matter what I might think in the middle of the night when I can't sleep.
All right. Carrie Drohan notes that Ian Fleming wrote from 6 to 11 every morning before he started drinking, as opposed to James Joyce, who got drunk enough to write first. And the question in there is whether you can expand on why you like the early morning to write the best.
Yeah, well, so Fleming just got all that sexism out of his system before lunch, huh? Ooh, sick burn. Yeah, in your face, Fleming, fight me. I could talk about James Joyce too, but I'm a morning person. I had to accept that. When I was in my early 20s and I started working AM shifts, like opening shifts in food service. And I was like, oh, waking up at 6 actually kind of suits me. Because before that, I was kind of trying to do the thing where I'd like party until 3 a.m. and then would always like wake up at 7 a.m. with a hangover and not be able to go back to sleep. So I accepted I was a morning person in my 20s. It's different for different people. My wife is a night person. She does better work in the evening. My brain craps out at like 8 p.m. So I got to get in there early. Yeah. So right when is good for you. It's different for different people. It's your biology, it's your psyche. And you know, anyone who says like, you have to write at 7 a.m. every day, they're lying. That just works for them. And they think that whatever works for them works for other people.
All right. George Albert, who is a professor here at 4Cs, wants to know how we can motivate students to fulfill our crazy assignments. If they need to write, how do we get them to move into that mindset?
Yeah, you should kidnap their dog and be like, yo, this thing is dead unless you turn in your... No, I'm not sure. I think, I think I try to take it, in my teaching, I try to take a generative approach in class. So I always have a little bit of writing time every week that helps the students get something on the page. And it kind of gets them, it gets that car out of the driveway. So when the time comes to write some more, they feel like they've already started. They feel capable. Because I think the hardest part of writing is just like getting your butt in the seat and getting started, getting over that anxiety of like, ah, shit, I got to write. What do I do? So that's how I try to remedy that. And also, I think it goes back to small attainable goals too, of just having people do a little bit, a lot, as opposed to a big chunk once.
Okay. Tom Schaefer, who teaches creative writing at 4Cs, is hoping that you'll say out loud that it's okay for writers to write stuff and throw it away. And he wants to know how you cope with writer's block.
Yeah. It's don't throw it away. Save it, put it in that weird part of your Google Drive where you convince yourself that you're going to come back to it, but you probably never will. So you never know. You never know. And maybe when they do the extended remix version of your book, that could be one of the bonus tracks, you know? Writer's block, I think I cope with that by, I hope this doesn't sound too pithy, but I cope with it by writing, by just trying to write as often as possible. And some days it feels like the time goes by like that. And other days it's a chore to even get a couple of paragraphs done. But I just know that I'm going to come back the next day and that some days are going to be better than others. And I think that doing a little bit, a lot of times, helps me from feeling blocked, because it's always, that faucet's always kind of dripping, you know?
All right, and the last question of the night is a follow-up question from Aaron, who wants to know if there's any topics or themes that you haven't explored but you'd like to in your future work.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've kind of talked about race enough, and I'm looking forward to doing something else. I'm exploring kind of ideas of responsibility and authority in the book that I'm working on now. It's like a couple of characters who end up in charge of stuff when they didn't want to be, and it kind of, you know, it ages them in certain ways. So that's something that I'm kind of turning over in my head right now. How authority can corrupt people, and also how it can exhaust people.
All right. So I have a few more trivia questions for everyone before we say goodnight. The first person to answer correctly in the chat pod wins a copy of Black Card. Congratulations to Anne for correctly identifying Razor Cake as America's only nonprofit punk rock magazine. Once again, Chris sang in a band that toured the United States and Europe. What was the name of the band? And as Chris was alluding to a moment ago, which publisher released Chris's book, Black Card? All right. Alexa correctly answering Light the Fuse and Run was the name of Chris's band. Aaron correctly identifying Catapult as the name of the publisher. One more question for everybody. There it is right there.
Light the Fuse and Run used to play with Bashla's old band Del Cielo all the time, and her bandmate Katie Otto put out our first record.
All right.
Yeah.
And which city is the setting for Black Card? Alexa and Aaron, if you could enter your information into the chat pod, I'll make sure the books get out to you. Congratulations to Bajla for correctly identifying Richmond as the city. Bajla, if you could put your contact information into the chat pod as well, I'll make sure that books make their way to you.
I have another kind of pitch or thing. Paper Fire is the name of the band in Black Card. And I got buttons made for the band in very early 2000s punk rock style impact font. So if you'd like one of these or two of these to wear in your jean jacket, give Black Card a nice review on Amazon or Goodreads or something, and send me a screenshot on Instagram or Twitter or something, and I'll mail you some.
Okay. All right. So everybody, thank you for coming to the opening night of the Bigger Boat Visiting Writers Series at Cape Cod Community College. This was a lot of fun. Thank you again to Chris for being our inaugural author. Hope it wasn't too painful for you, Chris.
This has been great fun. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for your questions. I hope I answered them satisfactorily.
Please come back sometime, Chris. We'd love to have you IRL sometime.
That'd be good. Yeah.
All right. So a reminder to everybody that on Wednesday, November 4th, we're going to welcome D. Eric Parkinson, whose recent collection, No Arcadia, is fantastic. And then on Wednesday, December 2nd, Dr. Amy Brady will be here to talk about, among other things, how contemporary fiction addresses issues of climate change. So thank you all for coming to the inaugural night of the Bigger Boat Writing Series. Peace. See you soon.